Welcome to the Inbound Back Office Podcast, where we chat with smart agency owners about agency challenges. I'm Holly Reed, strategist at Inbound Back Office, plug and play back office support for your marketing agency. Today on the show, I have the pleasure of welcoming Lynn Tickner, founder of Ink and Key, to talk about how to create business names that sell. Welcome, Lynn.
Thanks, Holly. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. And what a fun topic that we're going to dive into. But before we get into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm a little old lady that could and started my business at age 49 and just celebrated our 7th birthday at Ink and Key. And we did start as a naming agency and have expanded to sort of a full service agency now, so we can help entrepreneurs get unstuck with all the things, starting with the name, and then we can help them build that brand and grow it.
That is awesome. I know naming is such a huge part of marketing, and especially when people are either launching a business or launching their agency, that is the biggest thing that is like on their mind to figure out, because you almost can't do anything until you start with that.
Yeah.
So that is awesome. I know I've always been intrigued by what you do and how you do it, because naming, I mean, it was so hard. It took me like 2 years to figure out the name of my own business. And I know a lot of agencies struggle with that and struggle helping their clients with it.
It is. And that is why people pay us to do what we do.
Yeah.
It is. You don't think it's going to be hard until you get into it. And then you run into all sorts of obstacles and things, and people get stuck. So that's why we do what we do.
So what is your process? Like, how do you kind of figure out how to create a business name that actually will sell? And, you know, like maybe dive into just some of those first steps as we kick this off.
Well, it's really, really important at the very beginning of a naming project to get everyone on the same page. That is the most important thing. And so in order to create a good naming brief, which is what is going to inform all of the name creation, you need to first figure out who's making the decision. You know, when you have multiple decision makers, which oftentimes happens.
Yes.
Those multiple decision makers are not involved in creating the naming brief, which often happens. A lot of times there is someone in a company and they're told, hey, this is your assignment. Go do this and create a name. So they may even ask the CEO or other people on the board or whoever is involved in the decision. They may even ask them, hey, would you help us fill this questionnaire out? Because we start with a questionnaire for every naming project. And a lot of times the decision maker is too busy, or they say, we trust you with this. Okay. So they do the best they can. And we do a whole naming project. We come up with a short list. And then the person who has been assigned this lovely task of creating a name goes back to the decision makers, presents the names, and all the names are rejected.
Yeah.
And then it's frustrating and, you know, kind of defeating for that person who's been working really hard.
Yeah.
And so I love to help people prevent that problem from ever happening in the first place. So I have like a series of videos and all kinds of things that I do at the beginning of a project. Just even when they're starting the whole process of filling out that questionnaire, to really, really encourage them to get those decision makers involved first and foremost. And that requires some time and thinking, because they have to think about what are the attributes or qualities of an ideal name for us. And usually they don't know, because they've thought about it before. And that's okay. That's what we're there for, to help them with that. But what is great is if everyone at the table can agree, if a name meets X, Y, and Z criteria or whatever, or if they check these boxes, then we will all agree now that we're going to consider that name a possibility. And if you do that up front, then when you come back and say, here's some names, and guess what? They check these boxes. You agreed that you would consider them. And that just helps so much. That's one of the many things to think about with naming, but that's usually where we start, with a good questionnaire and making sure that if you can, to get agreement up front.
Yeah, that's an important piece. I mean, with almost any like high level marketing stuff, especially naming, I mean, it's such a crucial part. That's a hard thing for just someone to run with if they're not a big decision maker, because that decision maker is going to have opinions every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too. There are so many myths and misconceptions out there about a
Right.
business name. And one of them is that it's going to be love at first sight.
Right.
It's going to be little cupids flying around, and that you're just going to know it when you see it.
Yeah.
So then you'll get a lot of feedback that says, oh, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, sorry, but that's not how you make marketing decisions if you're not feeling it. It's more of objective. Hey, will this name be able to hold all that my brand will become?
Yeah.
Does this name have the potential to work alongside my marketing plan and strategy? Things like that. But most of the time, people will respond to a name subjectively and emotionally instead of objectively. And that's sometimes what causes a lot of pain and why they need some naming therapy. So
that is great. That is great. Oh my goodness. Naming therapy. That's real.
it is.
So when you're kind of going through this process, you've done the questionnaire, you come up with a list of however many, how do you start to figure out, like, because you said earlier that it has to kind of hold what the brand could become, how do you kind of figure that out at this point in their brand?
Well, we do have a detailed naming brief to work from, and I have a team of people. So I am not the one that's usually coming up with the names. I'll step in and help here and there, but I've got a team of 18 people who are super creative and fun and just a really diverse group of people.
That's awesome.
And that's what makes the process magical, is all of those people working together. It's not a contest. It's not a contest, but it is, everyone is sort of all in for the success of this client, but they're all coming at it from different perspectives with different processes, different ways of generating names. And that's what it just helps. You get all these out of the box ideas that you probably would never have come up with yourself, just with anything in marketing. When you're so close to your own stuff, it's
for sure
hard. But if you get someone from outside looking in, they can provide a better perspective. And that's I think it's not the hardest thing in the world to come up with name ideas, but to get a really big, diverse list to work from is really important. And that's why it's great to have my team, because it only takes a few days and we've got a pretty huge list to start with. And then we can start going through that list and figuring out which ones would be actual contenders, taking some off the list. But that's sort of the beginning of how it works. And then we have hopefully a really good naming brief. And oftentimes, I think I mentioned this before, we will create names according to the brief, but then when the client starts getting involved with the team and giving feedback, they start realizing, oh, I said I wanted this kind of name, but now that I'm seeing it, I don't. And that's okay. We expect that. And sometimes clients feel bad about that, but that's the beauty of the interactive process. Instead of just me writing a list and saying, here you go, here's your name, short list. When a client gets to come in and talk to my team and interact with them, we use Slack to do that. It's just fun, and it helps clients discover the kind of name that's actually going to work. And it's just very, very helpful. We've seen it over and over again. Clients come in and they say, I want this sort of name. And this is my made up statistic, but I think it's pretty close. I think about 65% of the time when clients come through, they will walk away with the kind of name they said they did not want in the first place. And that's just, but that's what makes it kind of fun.
That is fun. And I think it does take some of that back and forth, because I know for me, when I was figuring some of that stuff out, I was like, oh, I want this kind of name, or I want this, and it means this to me, but other people are like, no one's going to get that, and I was like, dang it. Okay. But it takes that feedback and then figuring it out. of like, what actually does that business stand for? Where are they going? You know, are they completely changing what they've done before? I mean, it's got to be such a back and forth process to really pull out of that person what they want.
Yeah. And, you bring up a really good point, Holly, because as you know, from being involved with Business Made Simple and StoryBrand, we learn a lot about how the human brain works when it comes to marketing, because we're humans and we deal with humans. And one of the things that's really interesting about our brains is that when our brains encounter something that's unfamiliar, we reject it.
Yeah.
We do. And the other thing that we do is we will try to find something in our brain that's familiar, and then we connect it to the unfamiliar.
Yeah.
We have to do that so we can remember it. So when a client is like, let's say they're looking at, 40, 50 names all at once, they're just words on a screen.
Yeah.
They're out of context, they're unfamiliar. It's not their brand yet. And if they don't use their imagination, all they see is this unfamiliar word, and it's overwhelming and it's confusing. And that's another reason why a lot of names that are pretty worthy names and good potential names get rejected, because it's not the person's fault. It's just the way their brain works. And if I can help people understand that, that helps them kind of give names more of a chance to marinate and say, okay, I'm going to, because that's where you go back to the objective criteria. It really, okay, I'm going to give this name a chance. I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to come back tomorrow and look at it again. And I'm going to pretend like it is the name I picked. And one thing I tell people to do is to just, take these names that are on your short list, pretend like it really is your name, go around all day long and say it out loud, see how it feels in your mouth. See how it feels in context of how you would really use it in real life. If you pick up a phone and use it, if you're talking to people, create we do logo mock-ups for people, sometimes just to show them this is what it could look like visually, and sometimes letters look really funky together, and you have to think about that. You have to think, what's it going to look like visually? So these are all things that can help people, but it is just so interesting how brain science works into naming too, and I geek out on a little bit of that stuff. So
yeah, that's awesome. What have you found that plays in when it comes to kind of the messaging, like marketing side of that, where, does the name need to match what the company is doing? Like if they're an agency, does it need to say that in the name? Does it need to talk about marketing in the name? Or can you get away with more of a kind of unique name? What is kind of your thoughts around that?
That is such a good question. And I get that a lot. And I know there are some camps that say you just need a name that says exactly what you do. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I understand it. And sometimes a descriptive name is perfect. But if you have a descriptive name, like for example, let's talk about StoryBrand guides, who are awesome in my community and your community that we love so much. So many StoryBrand guides create names for their agency or their company, and they have the word story in them. Okay. And so and I'm not saying any of these names are bad and they work really well for them, but when you end up having a whole category that's flooded with names that are really, really similar, you just are making more work for yourself to stand out. And that's just one little example, and it's good to have, you can have a name that might not be super descriptive, but it might have a little industry definer in the URL. Like if you are a marketing company, you can have XYZ name marketing, or, dry cleaners, or whatever you can. So that industry definer in your URL can help people, but also it's always important to understand that your name is just the beginning of what your brand is going to become and will continue to evolve into. It's like the door. And it opens to everything else that your business and brand is going to come to represent. But some people try, and I've always used this analogy as I have a 5-part free video series on naming that people can sign up for. And one of the things I talk about is don't make your name try to wear too many hats.
Yeah.
Because it's just a word. Your name is not supposed to do everything that your brand is going to do. Don't make it, pick one hat, which could be just to create curiosity. That could be to describe what you do, but it might not be. That hat might be to just create curiosity. So hopefully that's helpful.
I think that's a really good way to talk about it, because I mean, I know in the StoryBrand Guide community, I have seen where a lot of people were, even when I was trying to figure out a name, they're like, it needs to say what you do. And I'm like, does it? No, like, does it? Because I think you're right. I think a lot of people try to get everything in that name, and then it either becomes really long or, and even mine right now is kind of long, but like, it can become so convoluted that it kind of dilutes your brand a little bit, and doesn't invite people in more, because they're like, oh, I see your name, I know what you do, okay, I'm moving on. Versus like, oh, that's interesting, what else, what do they do, and kind of starts that journey. But I do think it's easy when you're trying to create clear messaging all the time. It's so easy to then go to your name and be like, well, it needs to be super clear, and and then just fall into that trap a little bit. And not that it's always bad, but it's like you said, it can get really muddied if you're all in the same community, or everybody's a marketing agency owner and they all say that, right? It's like there's no curiosity kind of sparked in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing, is like, you can have a made up name or a metaphorical name. Like my name is a metaphorical name. And then if you do, then I always recommend, if your name isn't descriptive, make sure your tagline and your one-liner are super descriptive. Because it's, again, your name is going to be seen and encountered in context of everything else. It's not going to be just floating around in the air and people have to figure out what it is. It's going to be on a sign, it's going to be on your website, it's going to be on social media. And it's going to be part of how, obviously how people feel when they encounter you, like I love to use the example of the Apple phone box. Whenever you lift up that lid, there's that little whooshing sound. That's part of the brand. And that's part of, so it has nothing to do with the name, but it's just one thing that we associate with the name Apple, is that feel of how everything is so elegantly packaged, And I wanted to, if people are interested, I always like to mention this book by a really nice person. His name is Rob Meyerson, and I'll put it in front of my face so it's more focused. But it's called Brand Naming. Rob is an expert. He's someone I always look to when I'm looking for naming advice and wisdom. And he says that names have to be meaningful, adaptable, and distinctive. And he goes into great detail about each of those characteristics. And it's just really, if you're interested in that, I recommend buying his book. He also has a course that he teaches, that all of my naming team have taken his course.
That's awesome.
It's just very good, and it's helpful if you really want to get into it.
And do you also do a lot of naming, not just for brands, like their maybe business name, but also like product launches or, different, because in marketing, there's so many things you have to name.
We love naming products. Oh my goodness. I can say this, name drop alert. A few years ago, Hershey came to us 3 times for some product names.
Oh, that's awesome.
And there's another big company, I can't say their name, but like they were, when I was a kid, we always read cereal boxes at breakfast. And so that's the name you're probably familiar with. And we named one of their products, which was really, really fun and exciting. We were all starstruck.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we love naming products. It's just really fun. And our latest product launch that we've done, I'm so in love with this product. I actually have it. Well, I have the box behind me, but it's called Nochi, Nocci. And the website is mynochi.com. And this is an awesome, super cute little travel blender. And so it is the only travel blender that's out there that's has a microfilter, so you can make homemade nut milks and plant milks and smoothies and juices, and it's USB powered. It's just so cute and fun. And so we took that, we named it, we did all the brand messaging, designed the logo, the packaging, and the whole thing in the launch. And it's just been an absolute ball, and just,
That's so fun.
yeah, just a fun client. And so Nochi means nuts. And
That's
that's where that
awesome.
name came from. And it just worked.
Yeah, I remember seeing
Yeah.
that, like when you were talking about it, and I was like, that is such a cool name. Like I would have never come up with something like that. Like it's so good to have someone in the marketing space that understands naming and
Yeah.
both products, businesses, whatever, because it is kind of its own area. And people that do branding, try to do the naming and sometimes can nail it. But I think being so specific on naming, and then you can add the other parts to it, is so helpful for people. I love it. I love that that's what you do, and how you start your agency is by naming people's stuff.
Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And it really is an area that people don't think about until they get into it. And
Yeah.
then, what I hear over and over and over for years is, I'm stuck. We're stuck. We've been working on this for months and we're stuck. And then they
Yeah.
end up coming to us. And so I love the fact that we can save, business owners and entrepreneurs time and money by helping them get this done so they can keep going.
Yeah.
You know?
It does. It does. Like, I mean, it took me 2 years to figure it out. And it does kind of stop you, because then you're afraid to do anything else, because you're like, well, I have this brand, but I don't love it. And if I make that big, then
Right.
it's harder to change later. It becomes this whole like battle of like, which comes first. Right. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs and agency owners get stuck there, and then their clients get stuck there. And it's good to have a resource like you, where it's like, hey, you need a name, go to Lynn, she'll get you taken care of. Is there anything else you want to share before we end today about names that sell?
Well, I think the most important thing is to, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't let yourself sit for months, in the coffee shop with your partners, brainstorming on sticky notes,
Yeah.
you can come up with one that's great, go for it. And it's very exciting. But if you need some help, don't be afraid to reach out and ask.
Yeah. And even if like you have a name you kind of like, it's, bringing it to someone like you who's an expert that can maybe tweak it just that little bit, right, to make it really pop, is a good idea. It's like you could have done a lot of the legwork, but getting, it's just not quite where you want it. It's like that's a good time too.
And you asked me if there was something else I wanted to share. This is what I wanted to share. Is I think that a lesser known service that I offer that a lot of companies need is, well, for one thing, what you just mentioned, if somebody already has a name, one thing that I do is I offer naming consults as a paid service. And so if somebody just wants to bring their team and, hang out with me for an hour, we'll go over your short list together and I'll help you pick one.
That's awesome.
And that's really helpful. But another thing is, companies that grow, they end up having courses and product names and service names and all this internal stuff and external stuff that ends up becoming overgrown and convoluted and confusing. It might confuse internal, like employees, but it also might confuse your customers. And so I have so much fun going into all the mess of names and renaming things internally or externally, products, services, courses, so that everything is more aligned and it makes more sense. And that is a need that a lot of companies have, but sometimes they don't even know that it's a problem until somebody names it for them. And then they go, oh yeah, that could be one of the reasons why we're struggling. And then it's like, organizing a closet. You just feel so much better afterwards. So another thing that we enjoy doing.
That's awesome. Well, Lynn, this was so fun. I love talking about this kind of stuff. You're the best out there for it. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise with everyone. Why don't you tell everyone real quick where they can find you online and connect with you?
Yeah. And Holly, thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to connect with you again. My website is inkandkey.com, inkandkey.com.
Awesome. And I know you're on LinkedIn, and you also have that 5-part series, right, that people can watch. So I'll put that in the show notes. I'll put all those links in the show notes so everyone can connect with you.
Absolutely. And, my project manager says I'm too available to people, but I am. So if you go to my website and you hit contact and schedule a call, you can schedule a free 15-minute call with me. And I just love talking to people. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Lynn. And thank you everyone for listening to the Inbound Back Office podcast, brought to you by Inbound Back Office, plug and play back office support for your marketing agency. You can find Inbound Back Office at inboundbackoffice.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, which I thoroughly did, take a minute, leave us a review and share it with other agency owners. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly episodes. Until next time.